Well, I'd like to welcome everyone out today to this portion of the agenda, which we're calling From Student to Startup Panel Discussion. I'd like to, I know we've got people that are going to be kind of filtering in, and that's great. Just come in, take your seats. But we'd like to get started and just be respectful of everybody's time. Our distinguished panel today has probably accomplished more collectively than some of the biggest companies in the United States with the startups that they've had and the success that they've had. We're extremely grateful for their time and delighted to have them here with us today. And what we'd like to do to start is maybe just begin on the end and have each of them introduce themselves and tell you a little bit about their history.
Yeah, my name is Christina Brodbeck. I live in San Francisco now, but I'm originally from the Chicagoland area. Went to U of I, majored in history, graduated in 2001, but while I was here really got into UI design and stuff like that. Then moved out to California, had a bunch of jobs in startups and then NASA and larger corporations. And then worked on a side project which became YouTube, so I was on the founding team there and the first UI designer. And then the last 2 years I was there, led UX for YouTube Mobile, left in 2009, made around 20 angel investments, and started a company in the health and wellness space. And then this past year started a venture fund called Rivet Ventures, and we invest in companies whose products and services target a predominantly female demographic, and we're gender agnostic on the founder side.
Can I just go home after that? So you weren't busy at all during that period of time. So my name is Al Goldstein. I graduated from the U of I in 2002, majored in finance and math, and went to work in investment banking, which at the time I guess was a cool thing to do. And spent about a year and a half doing investment banking. Quit, started a company in the fintech space, focusing on subprime consumer, and ended up actually selling that business toward the end of 2006, and had a 2-year run, and then got into real estate in 2009, buying distressed real estate, of which there was quite a bit, and recently started a new company about a year and a half ago called AvantCredit in the fintech arena, again, online lending space, similar to Lending Club, if you guys are familiar with Lending Club. So happy to be with you.
God, I feel like the old guy, because I am. So I went to school here in the engineering school. I graduated with a computer science degree in 1983, so like probably more when most of the people in the audiences were even born. But I actually came to U of I because of a scholarship, which worked out great. I grew up in Illinois, and I ended up working my summers, and the summer between my junior and senior year, went to work for Arthur Andersen, got a job offer at the end of it, took it, worked my whole senior year, and then went right out of college straight to Andersen. Worked at Arthur Andersen for about a year and a half. Thought I was going to get promoted in my review. Turned out I didn't get promoted because, quote, I needed, quote, line experience, which meant for them work on a mini or mainframe, so I quit. Started a microcomputer consulting firm, ran that for 20 years, took it public and sold it. And then after that, found out it's no fun to be retired when all your friends aren't retired. So I decided to go back to my roots and be a programmer again. Started writing a website just so I could learn how to do it and get my arms around it again. And then when I showed all my friends what I was doing to try to solve my son's homework problem, they liked it, they thought it was cool. So I commercialized it and went out and bought the domain from a bankruptcy lawyer. Ended up launching a website called answers.com. And 3 years ago we sold that. And when we sold it, it went from just me and myself thinking it would be a cool homework project to we had about 130 million active users that month. We ended up selling for about $127 million. And now I'm decided I'm going to take a step back. I actually teach now at the business school up at the University of Chicago. So I had a little bit of fun there. And I'm also on the board of 1871 up there.
My turn, I guess. So my name is Marcin Kleczynski. I started a company called Malwarebytes back in high school in 2008. Since then, I've attended the University of Illinois in a computer science program, and I've been running a San Jose-based company out of my dorm room. We have had about 500 million downloads of the anti-malware product that we've built. About 150 employees now, based out of San Jose, and I graduated just a year and a half ago. And I'm commuting Monday through Friday to San Jose, California. So that's a fun one. And yeah, that's about me and my company.
Fantastic. Thank you, panelists. And I'll just introduce myself. I'm Alex Ruggieri. I'm a partner in the real estate development firm here in town called Renshaw Real Estate. And we also own the Sperry Van Ness franchise for commercial real estate here. And as a passion of mine for the last 6 years, I have done a radio show called Central Illinois Business with a focus on entrepreneurship. I also had for 5 years, a television show called One-on-One with Alex Ruggieri, which focused on business leadership. Currently, I'm the executive producer for the National Association of Realtors Commercial Connection National Podcast, and I also am the business contributor for CiLiving magazine, our CBS affiliate here at WCIA Channel 3. So I'm especially pleased to be here with you and with our distinguished panelists. I would like to begin by starting out with just throwing some questions out for our panelists. And I want to tell you that we're going to kind of, towards the end of this, allow a good 10 or 15 minutes for your questions. And while I have a list of questions here, I really want to encourage spontaneous discussion by the panel. So feel free to just, free form. And the other thing I'd like to encourage our panelists to do is please be as transparent as possible. I don't want you to give away any trade secrets, but we want to get at the root of what it really takes today to get a business launched. And anything that you say that you think might be important should be shared because one idea, just one idea from this panelist could change somebody's life out here and maybe even our whole community and make our world a lot better place. So hopefully we're going to do some good here by just you sharing. So the very first question is to the panel. Pretend for a moment that you are a judge on Shark Tank. And I am a student presenting my business plan. What do I need to demonstrate to you in the first 5 minutes for you to get your attention?
Okay.
You have to say which judge you would be.
Are you Mark Cuban? Or?
I don't know, but I think one of the most important things is being a really good storyteller. Being able to be a charismatic storyteller, but also an efficient storyteller, getting across, what your business or your product is in a very short period of time. But it goes beyond even just that pitch. You need to be a good storyteller to convince people to join your company as employees, or to get a co-founder to join, to get partners, to pair up with your company, to convince investors. So I would say being a good storyteller.
Yeah, I think that's especially fair because I think all met with 10 companies this morning, and it's just hard to keep everything straight. And so you want to be able to say, oh, that stood out because, I really got excited about that within a span of 3 minutes or 5 minutes or 10 minutes. But I would say if we're looking at businesses, at least from my perspective, I think, idea or market is number one because that's the prerequisite. It doesn't get you anywhere other than the fact that, it can happen. So if we can get comfortable with the idea, how are you going to execute that idea? And all of that in 3 minutes or less.
I have a little bit of an opportunity here because one of the I've been in the last few years since we sold Answers, I've invested in probably about 60 or 70 angel rounds up in Chicago, and one of them is 2 students who are based over at ISU and participated in ISU's business plan competition. 3 weeks ago, they were on Shark Tank. And so it's a company called Packback. Their goal is to be the pay-per-view of textbooks. And in talking with them, because they actually filmed the show back in September, and one of the insights you may want to walk away with if you ever get near Shark Tank is it was really 2.5 hours for them to give them their 12-minute segment. So it's a big, long thing edited down to really drive the point. So they had a lot of time to explain and discuss their point of view. But the thing that's important for all the companies that you look at Shark Tank, what you have to convince is you have the one thing, which is the most important thing for your entrepreneurial venture. You have the ability to bring a paying customer to the table. And so they have to understand what your market is and conceive that it's a big market. You have to understand what your differentiation is. Why would someone who's currently using some solution want to change from that solution to yours? And then most importantly, that you have the skills, the insights, and the experience to execute what you say is the strategy. And you have to get that across in your opening pitch, or else you don't have a chance.
Didn't you say that you knew Mark Cuban
I
when
did.
he was a student here?
No, Mark Cuban was a student at IU.
Oh,
And
IU.
he graduated a year behind me. We both started our companies. I started my first company, Lante, in August of 1984, and he started his in July of 1984. And so I've known him since the 80s.
Fantastic. Your thoughts, Marcin?
Yeah, so I'm the young one here. You're going to see a couple of different answers from me. I don't have as much experience as these guys do, but when I was walking around today, I was looking for two things and two things only, and that was energy and passion. And that is the only things that really matter if you've got a great idea. I think energy and passion bring a lot to the table. I think the winners that we chose were really good, like you said, good storytellers, but behind that story there was a lot of energy and passion. And I think caffeination helps a lot.
I think that's a good point. I mean, if you want to get others, whether they're customers or employees or investors, to believe in you, you've got to show that you fundamentally believe in it yourself and you are all in.
See, I'm already believing you.
Yeah.
Look at that.
That's good.
Because if you're not a true believer, why would they want to
Correct.
be, right?
So I think that's a good point.
Yeah, outstanding. And I love the comment about storytelling because for me, I couldn't believe all the wonderful stories that we had right here in our community, all these wonderful things that students were doing, spin-off businesses from the university, entrepreneurs, and no one was telling the story. And that's what launched the radio show, Central Illinois Business. So at least those stories are getting out there now. This question is designed to try to, peel the layers of the onion, and it sounds like a simple question, but I'd like you to try and add as much color and depth as you can. And we can start with Marcin and work our way back. How did you start your business?
That's a great question, actually. So every good business is started with a solution to a problem that you yourself have experienced. October 25th, 2003, I had gotten infected my parents' computer with a piece of malware, a Trojan that I got on some piracy website, if you will. And
That would have been a good conversation.
And to avoid getting grounded or getting my cell phone taken away or whatever, I quickly got to the internet and tried to reverse engineer this problem, get it solved. And I realized that the volunteers that had helped me for free online, it took them 3 days to help me solve my problem. I ran several utilities, several different applications, and I said, why can't this be automated? And so I stuck around that community and tried to take the 3 days down to 2, the 2 days down to 1, and finally the 1 day down to an automated tool called Malwarebytes anti-malware that these people started using. So that's how I started. I think a lot of you have seen these problems and are trying to solve them as well. And again, that's where the passion comes from. You had that problem, now you're never going to have it again, right? So I think that's
good. And you were in high school when you did that.
high school. We'll try
That's
to
the
avoid
cool thing.
parents.
All
I
right.
have a question, just to expand on that, because, and I read your bio, and I did a little research on how you started the company, and one thing that occurred to me was you had no money.
Right.
So let's make a point of that. He had no money when he started, but you found ways to get people involved, and can you just say how you did that?
Yeah, so you're right. I didn't have money. Quite the opposite. I would have shelled out $300 to go to Geek Squad or wherever to get my computer fixed. There were a lot of people that believed in the idea, and again, I was passionate about the idea of malware removal. I don't think any of you are, most likely, but a lot of people on this community that helped me for free were. So I needed a domain name. Malwarebytes got gifted to me. I'm not that creative. I needed a web server. Somebody gifted that to me because they believed in the idea, and completely bootstrapped all the way to.
So it's in-kind kind of participation by various players.
Right.
And certainly they probably got to get a return on that at some
Right.
point.
It was definitely crowdsourced, and their time was their return. I mean, they were able to use this product now in their tech shops and fix these computers, which they in turn saved money doing so. So.
Outstanding. I love that.
That's
Go ahead, Mark.
So mine was I quit my job. I mean, I went in, I was getting reviewed, I was told, well, we have to have you work on this mainframe project if you really want to get promoted. I'm like, no, that's not going to happen. Because I'd been working on my computer projects at Anderson for almost 3 years. I was the one who brought we took them out with the first meeting with the spreadsheet company for Lotus 123. I mean, I fundamentally believed in spreadsheets, but I more importantly fundamentally believed in the underlying architecture of microcomputers. So when I was in my review, I was kind of a snippy kid anyway. I'd been married, my wife was working a good job. And so I'm like, no, I can't do this. And then he's like, well, we'll never be able to promote you. I said, fine, I quit. Now, it took me a month and a half to actually leave because I wanted to finish up all my projects and leave on a good note. So I had a good reference. And I just, in that month and a half, started thinking about what I would want to do. I liked consulting. So I just started doing consulting, and I'd go in and talk to people. I learned a lot of things about, going in and starting a company. You got a domain gifted to you. You knew your company. That was good. I was not. First I was even pre-domains. But I basically, had a situation where I thought, if you're going to have a consulting firm, Tebbe and Associates. Not a good idea. Because if you're the only person and they ask how many associates you have, that's not good. Also, you always have to think, and this is especially important when you're naming your own children later in life. You always have to think about what can they make fun of it with. And never name your company Tebbe and Associates, A, because your name's not Tebbe, but B, they don't want to be called TNA. It just did not work either. And so for us, it was a simple situation. Just started doing consulting, and I was able to go out and meet people, talk to them. After I got past the age point, originally I realized this, it was a stupid name, so I convinced a friend of mine who I worked with at Anderson, who was working on a software program, to let me use his name, so it became Langer, Tebbe and Associates. And then people say, oh, yeah, I see you're the Tebbe. Tell me about this Langer guy. So I explained he was 38, which was a lifetime ago. And I did this, and this. And all of a sudden they'd say, oh, I do have this project. So we would win the projects during the day, and I'd do the work at night. And I got to where I had more work than I could take on, so I'd hire somebody part-time, then I hired someone full-time. And in a couple of years, I was basically had enough employees. I said, I'm going to do this. And in the end, we ended up with about 1,600 employees, 14 offices around the world before we sold it. And it still lives today. It lives today known as Razorfish. So, but it really is one of those things of you just got to believe in it and really just drive, it becomes part of your core being to see this thing into existence. And you have to believe that it's offering a value to people and listen to them. And if they say it's not, you have to understand why. And the hard thing is to, see the problem through their eyes. And that's important to do.
Well, so maybe I'll talk about my current company as opposed to my first company, just to give maybe a change of pace. So this company, AvantCredit, that we're running now is a year and a half old, but my two co-founders are both Illinois alums as well, who are 27 and 28, and this is their first business. And they were my former interns at my first company. And so they kind of did the path where they came out of school, they worked at a later stage startup, quit, went into an incubator, they went to YC, kind of like the hot incubator in the Valley, and they started a business, and it didn't quite work out. They had a cool product, it was named as like a top 3, top 5 YC company, and they just couldn't really raise money, they couldn't just get users, and they were looking at what to do, and one of the things to do was maybe get acqui-hired or sell to a bigger company. And we were literally getting together, and they got me interested because they basically were just brilliant, focused. They were devoted to the idea of building a business, and we got a drunk, hungover lunch together and just said, okay, let's do this. And a week later, we were in the Valley pitching a VC. 3 weeks later, we had a team of 4, and 2 months later we were live. And today we have 180 employees or something. So, it's just I think to your guys' point, you just have to do it.
I agree. I guess I can talk a little bit about the venture funds and stuff that I'm doing right now. So there's 3 of us, and we're all women, and we all come from different backgrounds, and so we all saw a different need for this. For myself, I had been doing a lot of angel investing, and I would constantly get pitched by both men and women who were targeting a female demographic, and they would always ask if I knew any other female angel investors, and I knew like 5 that I could send them to. And then also the company that I had right before this, one of our products is the Icebreak, which targets a predominantly female demographic. And I remember going and pitching large VC firms that are primarily male, and they'll be like, hold on a second, and they'll bring in the office admin, right, who's a female most of the times, or they'll be like, let me ask my wife, right? And so there's not, a lot of these large firms are, 30, some of them are 30 men, and they don't necessarily intuitively get these products, right? And then my other partner, she comes from large venture firms, and they consistently passed on deals in the early stage because they just didn't get them, right? And then later on, they would come in those deals, but the deals were very high priced. And so for us, we really wanted to do something about this, and only 4% of the people who work in top tier VC firms in the investing partner are women, and so we really wanted to change that.
Outstanding. I really appreciated what Al had said about hanging out with a buddy at lunch and just brainstorming, and then you went off and decided to start this company. It reminded me of the story. I just did an interview with Joe Cosenza, who is one of the founders of Inland Real Estate, which is a publicly traded REIT on the New York Stock Exchange, valued at about $40 billion. And I asked him, how did you start your company? And he said, well, there was 4 buddies, and we were all in college together, and we were school teachers, and we decided we needed to make some extra money on the weekends. And I said, yeah. And he goes, well, we thought we'd build some houses. And I go, oh, were we builders? No, we were school teachers. And I said, well, did you have your real estate license? Well, no, we didn't. But we just figured we'd figure it out. And they started out just because they were buddies. And they went for it. Anyway, $40 billion later, all 4 of them still go to work every day, and all 4 of them are still buddies.
That's cool.
So I have a question for you, Christina. We ended with you, and you mentioned the fact that your company is staffed with women and women partners. And I'm not going to necessarily pick on you, but I thought you might like to speak to this. Doing some background and everything on you, I read that you are particularly concerned with some of women's issues in business and with your business projects. So this question is, what special obstacles do women face when entering business, and how can these obstacles be overcome?
That's beautiful. Okay. So to be completely honest, when I was, working as a UI designer, even though, for instance, at YouTube, I think of the first, probably like 15, 20 employees, like probably 2 or 3 of us were women, right? A very small number of us. I never actually, to me it was a complete meritocracy. I never actually noticed anything different as an individual contributor. It was a totally welcoming environment. When I did notice a difference was when I started my own company and I went to seek funding, right? Because then I was not really in control of my own destiny. Other people were, right? And most of those people who are in those positions were men, right? So that's when I really started to notice it. But I don't think that it's all, like, we can't blame men for this, right? There's a lot of things that we as women also need to change. For instance, a lot of times we say things like, oh, I got really lucky. I know I say that all the time, which definitely, it doesn't do us any good. Instead of saying that we deserve this or we worked really hard. Also, this has been very difficult for me. I'm pretty shy and soft-spoken, so the whole confidence thing is also something I think that we can work on as women. And then when you get into the investing side of things, just being more comfortable with risk and familiarizing yourself more with just the financial landscape.
Outstanding. Thank you so much for sharing that. This is a question that I asked with some trepidation because I'm talking to 4 extremely successful people, but it has to do with failure. What are some of the most important factors that cause small businesses to fail? And maybe we can start with you, Marcin, and then work our way back down.
I was hoping you'd start the other side. Losing that vision, this is something I'm personally guilty of as well. I was incredibly passionate about malware removal. Again, something you guys wouldn't be. Incredibly passionate about that, and as time progresses and you start putting out fires here and there and doing this and that and hiring and going to legal and fixing that and this, you stop doing what you actually love to do, and that's thinking about malware removal and revising the engine and the infrastructure and all of that. I set aside 2 hours every week just to make sure that I go and focus on that, because that is the most important thing. That is our bread and butter, what we do. And digging into the financials as an executive or as the leader of the company, that's not the only thing you should be doing. So I think losing focus early on is something that definitely makes companies fail pretty quickly. The other thing, and it was actually an answer to how you start the business. The question that you asked before is risk and trying to avert risk. People try to avert risk, and so they don't take chances.
Take appropriate risk.
Exactly, and appropriate risk, of course. But some people just don't take risk at all. And I was actually chatting with a buddy yesterday, and one of our friends wants to be successful but doesn't want to take any risk at all whatsoever. So it's you're laughing because that's just not possible. You should know that there are risks involved, and if you don't take them early on, you're not going to be successful.
There's no risk keeping your boat moored in the bay,
Right.
but you're not going to get anywhere either.
Right.
So, well put. You want to?
Keeping it moored in the bay requires that at least it got into the water.
Yeah.
A lot of times, there's a lot of times when people will take a step back and pontificate about what they could or should be doing and how it's going to work, but never really take that action. I'd say a lot of times I see companies fail, and I mean, look, I'm an angel investor, and unfortunately they aren't all home runs. A few of them have been pretty good, but the difficulty is more often than not, you see them where their eyes are bigger than their stomachs, and they tend to expand too fast into too many different areas. And there's a phrase out there called boil the ocean. It's physically not possible to do. The amount of energy it takes to do that is often underestimated. And a lot of times what happens is you see these startups, they pick a niche area, which to be successful, you gotta have a very tight focus. You gotta maintain that focus till you get enough of an established base and then build out around it. But unfortunately, they take a couple quick little wins, think that they're on a huge path to success, they overexpand, whether it's that they overexpand into the markets, they overexpand with their message, they overexpand with their employees, they overexpand with their costs, and the business doesn't grow as fast. I mean, one of the analogies I use all the time with people is, whenever you think you have a realistic business plan, double the cost, half the revenues, and double the amount of time that you think it's going to take. If you do that, then you're at least getting into the feasible realm of a business plan. But unfortunately, a lot of people don't do that. They just think, we're quick, we did this in 2 months, therefore we can do this in another 2 months, not realizing it doesn't always happen that way. And then they tend to starve themselves to death because they've overexpended themselves.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's exactly right. And maybe just to zero in on some specifics from my perspective, and I haven't done nearly as many investments, I think, as Mark has, as Christina has, but my success ratio has not been wonderful either. And I think looking back, it's a function of a couple different things. It's either, the idea really, when you think about it critically, didn't make sense from day one, and we made the assumption that we would have to pivot, which is hard because it's expensive and you don't know what you're going to pivot to. The team wasn't complete from day one. We were looking to build technology, but we had 2 business people and we were going to outsource it and we were going to figure it out, or we were looking to build a marketing engine, but we didn't have marketing expertise, or the team didn't get along and it couldn't scale. So from my perspective, it's, if the idea is good and the team is good and you can figure out how to sell people on your idea and bring it to market, you should be able to execute on something with some luck. But unfortunately, that's very hard to put together.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying. I think team is probably one of the biggest, if not the biggest reasons that a company fails. Maybe it's a co-founder that leaves, or there's an argument that happens, or they just don't persevere long enough. Like an example of this is, the first exit I had as an angel investor actually was this guy. At the time, he was the youngest founder that came out of Y Combinator, and he had moved here from Israel, and he came here with a co-founder and joined the program, and then his co-founder halfway through decided to leave and went back to Israel. And so this founder was left. He switched his idea, and 4 days before demo day, he came up with something new. So he didn't have a product, all he had was slides, and he gets up there and he pitches it. And he had a really hard time. Like, the rumor I heard was that some people came up to Paul Graham afterwards and said, like, this guy's an embarrassment to Y Combinator. He had a very difficult summer actually raising money because he was a single founder, no product, trying to find a founder and build this product. And he ended up later on, raising money from Sequoia and selling to Apple. And I really think that business would have failed if he gave up, right? And I think a lot of it really it does come down to the people in the team.
Well, one thing to notice, it's from failures. You look at some people who've had businesses that did not do well. They've learned something in the process. So everyone, I think, often overlooks and they dismiss a failure or they look down upon a failure. I mean, when people talk about technology in the Midwest, it's like, why hasn't it really taken off? Because unfortunately in the Midwest, if someone fails, it's harped on. It's like, oh my God, they failed. Out in the Valley, it's worn as a badge of honor because you failed with someone else's money. And a lot of times, and the important thing is that you learned from it and you're a better person for it. I mean, at Lante, we used to have a situation, we had a kid who messed up a project, and he's like, am I gonna, to the tune of $100,000. And at that time we were probably about a $14-15 million company. He goes, am I getting fired? I'm like, absolutely not. Why would I fire you now? We just spent $100,000 to educate you on how stupid of an idea that was, and you're going to tell every employee here why you're never going to do that again, and then I'll get my return on my $100,000 that I spent on you. And a lot of times people are so quick to dismiss, oh, it didn't work for blah, blah, blah. But to take a critical analysis and go back and ask yourself, what could I have learned from this? Because that's the only way you can improve. And a lot of times people don't look at their failures and say, how can I get better? But in life, it's from failure that we actually learn and develop ourselves more.
Wonderful counsel. I hope we're recording this and transcribing this, because this is distilled wisdom. Thank you. You have a student who has a wonderful idea. They have no money. Is there ideas, thoughts, strategies that you can share that they can't go do a market study, a way to test their ideas without having to go and spend 50 grand on a market study? Ideas for them for that?
Has anyone actually done a market study up here?
No.
No.
Family as guinea pigs.
I mean,
go ahead. I'd say it's funny. I'd love your guys' perspective too. But coming out of school, you think, okay, I need to get NDAs, non-disclosure agreements, with everyone I talk to. I need to go file for a patent, and I need to go do market studies and focus groups. The reality is, if you go pitch, if somebody came to pitch you and asked you to sign an NDA,
I wouldn't sign it.
yeah, you get kicked out, right? So the reality is, just go do it. Yeah, just go build a prototype and go do it.
one of the things I try to tell people is, everybody's got it right. They just don't realize how right they have it. Everybody has on their head 2 eyes, 2 ears, and 1 mouth. Unfortunately, when people are entrepreneurs, they kind of don't use them in that proportion. If they want to be successful, they should use them in that proportion. You don't need to go do a market study. You go out and you meet with customers. You listen to them. You see what they do. And you spend a lot of time doing it. 80% of your time doing that. Learning from what you can see and learn. And you don't have to go visit them face-to-face in person. You can do it over the phone. You can do it in interviews. You can do it via email. But you need to learn from their point of view what their latent needs are. And from that, with your expertise brought into it, you can then begin to craft the solution that can capture their need and solve their problem and really create an opportunity. And it's all too often people are like, oh, don't even create a, blah, blah, another search engine. So Alta Vista has that covered. Yahoo's got it owned. And then along comes Google with a better way to do it. Yahoo says, their way to do it is pretty good. We're going to license their technology. And then all of a sudden, Alta Vista's technology is looking a little dated. They start picking up and they figure out a model of how they're going to make money off of it. And all of a sudden, they're the industry leader. And it's important that people, believe that they can make that difference. But the way to do it is to go out and immerse yourself to understand what the problem is for your customers. Because again, like I said initially, what you got to find eventually is somebody who's going to write a check to support your product.
Can I say something here? As a designer, I can't tell you the number of times I've just drawn things on paper and then gone out on the street and asked people, hey, what do you think of this? Or would you use this? Or if you click here, does this make sense? You can have an idea for a product and just mock it up in plain paper and go out on the street or go to Starbucks or get people off of Craigslist and find out, if there is any, is there a market for this or not, right? You don't have to necessarily even have a working prototype.
That's actually called a low latency prototype. They're very helpful. And what Christina, when she was talking about being from YouTube, and she knows the story very well, I'm sure, even though I've never asked her for it. YouTube originally didn't start off as a video sharing site. Outside of Christina, anyone have a guess of what YouTube started off as? Okay, go out to, and if you don't have to believe me, let me just tell you right now the source of it. Go out to archive.org. Go out and go to the Wayback Machine, type in youtube.com. You don't have to do it now, just do it later at home, show all your friends, it's amazing. It actually started off as a dating site. So you go look at some of the original ones, it was a dating site. And then when the dating site didn't work, even after they ran a series of ads on Craigslist, and it didn't work, and the only reason I know it is I remembered when they were students here and I got to know them. And when they went and they thought, no problem, it's because it's all guys trying to get on it. We're gonna seed it with some women. They went on and basically tried to get, they put on ads on Craigslist and they still couldn't get people to apply to it. And so, and even though they were willing to pay them $25 an applicant, to like sign up for female applicants. So what they ended up doing is saying, let's rethink this. They did a pivot. They found out that the videos had kind of a stickiness. They then launched a video website. They got Matt Harding, right? Matt Harding is the guy?
He's the dancer, right?
The dancing guy. And he became the first viral video that took off. And so people then started to think that was kind of cool. And then, of course, SNL had the short that's going to be on, I think, tonight. Or maybe it was last night. About, with Adam Sandler and Justin Timberlake. You know, about a Christmas gift box. And that was the viral network that basically launched YouTube. But I mean, they keep going at it, and then no one would have ever thought that they originally started as a dating site. So no matter what your original thing is, keep your eyes open, keep listening to your customers, and figure out a way to really find out what their latent need is.
Yeah, and kind of going off of that, what you were saying, you know, I mean, it is true, right? It evolved from a dating site, and it wasn't necessarily a very clear-cut solution from the beginning in terms of what we were doing. But there was that passion, right? Like, it wasn't necessarily, I mean, the passion for the product was there, but before that, it was a passion for, like, working. Everybody was friends with each other, right? And everybody enjoyed going to work, and we had this passion for working with each other. And I think, honestly, that was probably one of the most important things, because when there was no clear-cut path, you at least enjoyed working with each other.
Wonderful, wonderful responses. Okay, this one I want to address to what I call the myth of entrepreneurship. So many people imagine in their minds that they're going to start a business and then sit on a beach, call in the office once in a while, check on things, and oh, by the way, don't forget to wire the money. What is it really like being an entrepreneur, starting a business, and really what are the net profits that you can expect from a business when you start?
Who has profits? You know, when you have profits, you get multiples. You know, we talk about revenue.
I guess, has anybody here had a vacation in the last year or 2 years?
I'm the wrong
I know someone.
I'm the wrong person to ask.
Yeah.
Because one of the reasons why I got into teaching is I thought, you know, I had been divorced for 15 years. I was like, just got remarried a couple years ago, and I was like, I don't have the energy to do yet another startup. And I really have nothing to prove. I started 2 companies, took them both public, sold them, they did okay, I can't complain, I've invested in a lot of other companies. But, so the reason I got into teaching is I thought it would be a good lifestyle, and yeah, so I took off January, February, March, and basically went on pretty much all around the world. I covered 5 continents in 3 months. But going to your question, since I just got razzed by Al for going on vacation, the reality is, for me, the joy of entrepreneurship is taking an idea that you believe in and getting others to see it and believe in it. Putting together a team. When I came to work and I walked into an office full of people whose livelihood in life depended on the idea that we collectively came up with, and saw them all working together doing different parts, doing things that I couldn't do. I mean, people are always like, wow, how did you get so good at that? I hired people who were way smarter than me. I mean, for 8 years, Lante, my little tiny company that ended up with 100-some odd million in revenue before we sold it, was one of the largest recruiters from the CS department here at U of I. Why? Because that's where the best students were. I would hire the best that I could buy, and they were way smarter than me. And I just was able to fool them to think that they had believed that I was smarter than them. But in reality, I surrounded myself with smart people. I believed in a no jerk we'll go with, policy, no whatever you want on the other side. And I just did not want people who were jerks around us. I wanted people who were fun to work with because we saw them every day. But the reward was coming in and seeing all these people doing it, and then seeing the solutions that we built. I mean, when we were like in business 15 plus years before we started building websites. But when we started building websites, we built Microsoft.com, we built Dell, we built American Express, American Airlines, and to see them just go from a business need to an opportunity, see people riff on them and basically take them to the next level, that's what's rewarding. And that is the fun of entrepreneurship. Yeah, if you do your job right, you make money, and then you can go to Cuba like someone here on my right, and then hang out with all your buddies, But in reality, the reward is the journey. It's not the end game.
I think it was Oscar Wilde that said, if you find something you love doing, you'll never work a day in your life.
Sure.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you for just embodying that philosophy. All right, well, we want to go and find investors. We have an idea, we've got proof of concept, maybe even we have a prototype, but we have to know how to speak the language. So what do all these terms mean, such as return on investment, and how is that different from net profit, and is that different from return on assets employed? What vocabulary do we need to know to talk to investors?
I think,
You're the
I think
investor, go
before
tell
that,
me.
I'm going to actually answer a question before. I think before that, you actually need to find how to get in touch with investors, which is it's very difficult. It can be difficult, right, depending on where you live and things like that. But a lot of people, I think, make the mistake of kind of just cold emailing investors, right? Or they'll send them their business plan. Like, if you send somebody your business plan, most likely somebody's not going to read that email, right? But if you can come through a warm introduction is usually the best way, or through a founder that somebody has invested in. I mean, people will occasionally respond to cold emails, so it's worth trying, but I think going through somebody is the best way to get to an investor.
Recent study. You have a 1 out of 18 chance of having your email or business plan read if you just send it to an investor cold away. You have a 1 out of 3 chance if you're referred by someone. And you have a 1 out of 1 chance if it's someone that they made money with in the past that basically is putting a personal endorsement on it. Today we have LinkedIn. Leverage LinkedIn for everything you can to find people who can connect you. And as for the terms that you phrased, I don't care. I don't want them to sit, if they're sitting there telling me what kind of return on assets I'm going to get when they're making a startup pitch, I don't have time for them because they're totally focusing on the wrong thing. I want to hear what the problem is that they're looking at, what their solution is, why their solution kicks the butt on anyone else's, and I want to hear a passion that they are basically ready to commit themselves to solve this problem because they fundamentally believe in it. I will measure that far more than I'll measure a return on an investment. Because the reality of the situation is, at that stage, they don't have enough information to give a credible answer anyway. And so if they're trying to sell me that, then they're bullshit. Then they're just kind of blowing smoke, and I don't buy that.
That's on camera.
Yeah, I know.
I'll give you the ex-banker perspective.
Yeah.
Which I used to build models. That's what we learned to do. We build models, and I don't do that anymore for that same reason. But I think what people do kind of dismiss and don't really focus on is unit economics.
Absolutely, got to have a unit economic. I'll give you that.
Yeah, because it's at the end of the day, whether it's a product, like we see on Shark Tank all the time, Christina brought, which I know nothing about. So, or some sort of, tech business. At the end of the day, you're going to have, one customer, and it's going to cost you a certain amount to acquire that customer, and that customer is going to have a lifetime value.
Absolutely.
And the more you can understand that unit economic equation over what period of time, and the attrition curve of those customers, I think that's important.
And also, I think also knowing, once you are able to get to the point where you can implement analytics, that's incredibly important, because maybe you don't have revenue, maybe you're not even bringing any money, but knowing what your user engagement is, doing cohort analysis where you track a group of people over time, that stuff is very important, and it can be really early indicators when people are just betting, when they're betting very early, it can help sway them.
Yeah, that's huge. I mean, that was our biggest mistake, is not embedding analytics, and then when we did, it's 25 million users, and we had no idea what they were doing. So I've had the pleasure of meeting about 35 investors or VC firms in the Bay Area, and it was not because I cold called, it was not because I got referred, it was because we built a great product and they wanted to hop on the train. So that's another, I guess, technique, is build a great product, get it in front of them somehow, some way. And honestly, at that point, they didn't care what our ROI was going to be. Their ROI was going to be. They didn't care what the multiple was going to come down to. That's all them. What they're doing. They want to see that you have a firm handle on the business. You know what your users are doing, what they want, and they'll guide you the rest of the way. They're not jerks. They're here to help you, and they want to be on the train, the successful train.
And especially they have a room full of MBA students sitting there as associates anyway. They'll build the model the way they want. Your job is to basically help them understand what your business is, explain what your customer acquisition costs, what's your long-term value. But more importantly than that, make them believe that you believe. And that's what they should be measuring.
Fantastic, fantastic. We're coming to the top of the hour. Before I open it for questions from the audience, and we want to have their participation also, I'll ask one last question, and hopefully each of you will have an answer for this. What are the 3 most important pieces of advice that you would offer entrepreneurs who are starting out today? start with Christina and work our way on.
If I have two, that's all I can think right now. Being persistent and being passionate, I think those are incredibly important.
Yeah, I would say do it for the right reasons because it's a long journey. You know, pick the right partners, and that's all I got.
Okay, pick the right partners is a good one.
Yeah, basically, know what you're doing in terms of what the problem is that you're trying to solve and who you're solving it for. Surround yourself with really smart people and really talented people, and then be honest. I mean, you'd be amazed how many people come in and you ask a question. I mean, I ask all kinds of questions just to watch people's reactions, and you know, and you would just watch how many people just try to blow smoke. And it's like, you know, just if you don't know something, say that's a great question. I don't know. I have a really healthy respect for people who say I don't know. But all too often people feel compelled. If there's a question, you must have an answer. And so they tend to want to make it up. In this game, be honest. Because in the end, you're going to have bumps in the road. And I want to know that you're going to be honest with me about those bumps in the road. And we can work together to get to the future.
I'm going to have some repeats here. I definitely agree with be persistent. The second one is be transparent to not only your employees but also your customers. If you screwed up, say you screwed up, admit the defeat. And the most important that I think, and the one I learned way, way too late, is marry the believers, divorce the naysayers. You want the people that care about the product, that believe in the product. You do not want naysayers. That will sink the ship very quickly.
Maybe I'll add my third one because I think it's a super important one is equitize your coworkers, not only your partners, which is something in Chicago we just don't do culturally. But I think, you know, it's a binary game we're generally playing. It's either going to be a real success or it's going to be a zero. So giving out pieces of the pie usually leads to a bigger pie.
And one other data point, when you're starting your business, watch the cash. I mean, a lot of times people start spending, they don't keep track of what their cash is. They start, you know, thinking they're investing for something in the future, realizing it's going to be a long time before they get any type of payback on that. And so more often than not, you know, startups fail because they run out of cash. So keep your eye on that cash and make sure you understand exactly how it's flowing. You don't have to be an accountant, you don't have to be an expert in that level, but you have to be able to read a cash flow use statement.
You keep your nose in it.
Yeah.
You may have others working on it for you, but keep your nose in it. Wonderful. Well, we'd really like to hear from the audience. Anybody with a question? Okay, right there.
Got it.
I don't know if we have a microphone, so please stand and speak loudly.
Okay. Hi, I'm Ben.
Hey, Ben?
So we kind of touched on this. I'm wondering if a student has an idea and he doesn't really need money at the moment, but he's looking for something like more than money in an investor. What sort of investor, or what sort of qualities an investor would you look for, I guess? Is that a good question?
Yeah.
Look for a mentor, I think.
Yeah, I was.
Yeah, somebody that doesn't want your money or doesn't want to give you money to make more money. I mean, you know, everybody wants to get rich, but there's people that are genuine out there. I know friends that do office hours that genuinely just want to help you. They just want to see you succeed. Find those type of people.
I mean, I sit at 1871 every day, and I hold office hours. People come in all the time. I'm not an investor in them. They're not asking me to be an investor in them, and I'm meeting with them, and I just try to help them because if they do well, the ecosystem does well. If the ecosystem does well, everybody does well. But I think what you need to find is people you can be open and honest with that, you know, you can learn from. And don't be afraid to ask. I mean, a lot of times people are like, wow, how did you get that mentor? And the entrepreneur will say, well, I asked them. You know, because if you don't ask them, they'll always never be your mentor. But if you ask them, you'll be amazed. They're retired, they've got a little bit of an interest, they want to do something fun, they want to do something, you know, with the student level energy, and it's good stuff.
I think everybody wants to feel special, so you'll be surprised how many times if you just ask someone to do coffee, they'll say yes.
Wonderful. We have time left, so let's hear some more questions. Yes?
I'm curious for those of you who are running your businesses on the West Coast, why not Chicago?
That would be those two.
Ladies first.
I mean, yeah.
Maybe we should reverse the question. Why are we in Chicago? No.
No, that's easy. I can give you, we'll let them answer. I'll give you a 1,000 reasons, without saying 1,000, why you should be in Chicago, in Illinois.
I mean, for me, it was Well, one, I don't like cold weather, so that was like a big factor. But it was one of those things. I actually didn't even realize that. Like I started UI design as a hobby. Actually, I didn't even realize it was a career, and I just found that I absolutely loved it. Right. And at the time, the only people I knew that were doing UI design were people from U of I who had actually moved out to Silicon Valley. So for me, those were kind of my only role models that I had. And so I kind of, thought to myself, like if I want to work in tech, I should move out to San Francisco.
Yeah, mine was more of a random events kind of thing. My partner, who I got introduced to by a mutual friend, was based out of San Jose, and we started the business officially out of his living room, and then moved into an office there. And you just couldn't unwind that after. So I went to school here. We were running an 80-person office from my dorm room.
Now, why stay in, first off, when I started my business, I was already living in Illinois. My wife worked for Commonwealth Edison. It's a power company. It wasn't moving. And and I started doing my consulting here. Today, I think is the best time for a company to want to start in Illinois ever before. First off, they can hire phenomenal talent, on par with anything you can find out in the Valley, for half to a third of the price you're going to pay in the Valley. And second off, you're going to find a lot of people who are willing to help. And if you want to find customers, there are more customers within a 300-mile radius of Champaign than there are within a 300-mile radius of San Francisco. But even more than that, the people here are genuinely nice. Now, why do they go to San Francisco? That's where the talent is. I mean, there's changes to be done to bring that. There's such an intrinsic talent base there that's to be leveraged. But I see it happening more and more in Illinois, and I think we're working hard to keep that trend going.
And my joke aside, I actually totally echo Mark's statements, because I've obviously done it. I've done it with my own companies, and I think in addition to everything Mark mentioned, money travels. So we used to talk about money on the coast, East and West Coast. Money travels to good companies. That's not a problem. Not only do we have talent, it's generally cheaper across the board. Our expense base for office space for everything else is cheaper. People are loyal. Big fish in a small pond is not necessarily a bad thing. It means that you can do something, you can attract talent, you can drive, your business faster.
And I'll give you one other data point. I was talking to a student a couple days ago up in 1871 who was going to be in San Francisco when he graduated in December, and now he's living in Chicago, and I was gone for a few months, as we already discussed earlier. So I asked him, I said, what happened? He's like, well, I looked around and, I just decided I want to be back here because the apartment, he's renting an apartment now in Chicago on the west side of the Loop for $780 a month, okay? He had a studio apartment, he got a 3-month studio apartment in Palo Alto, and he was paying $2,800 a month. And so the night and day difference of cost, he's like, I just want to do something else with my money than just pay for the rent. Oh, and he got his car. He kept his car because he couldn't afford it in California.
Yeah, and even though we're 80 people in San Jose, and the rest of our employees are worldwide, we have no engineers in San Francisco and San Jose. I mean, they're just way too expensive. Our engineers are in Clearwater, Florida, Boulder, Colorado, and Virginia Beach, Virginia. So the least sexy locations, but that's where the best talent is. And coming out of U of I as well, there's a lot of people I saw here that I would definitely hire.
I mean, I would love to see the largest percentage of the U of I, especially the CS graduates, graduate and stay in Illinois. And I hope that we can eventually get to that point. But even more than that, I hope the companies that they start stay in Illinois.
Well, on that poignant thought, we're going to have to end. I would love to be here all afternoon to just listen to you. It's just been so enriching. And would you all please join me in giving a hand to our distinguished panelists.